Good morning and welcome back to another edition of Master Your Finances presented by Certified Wealth Management and Investment. I am Kurtis Baker, a certified financial planner professional located in Princeton, New Jersey. I can be reached through our website, which is www.cwmi.us, or you can call me directly at 609-716-00. This week, we're very pleased to have with us Lisa Teach, who is a former business owner. She successfully sold her Five Guys franchise in 2017 and now teaches small business management at Rider University. She's also the director for Rider's Center for Entrepreneurial Studies, where she provides resources to students interested in entrepreneurship at any level. Well, Lisa, I think the timing is fantastic as far as what's going on out in the world today, because the last 30 to 45 days, it's pretty much changed everything, right? So I think we're all entrepreneurs now, whether you're a W-2 employee for the last 30 years or whether you're, so we're all being affected, right? So I guess maybe we'll start off a little bit with what kind of your thoughts are about the entire environment and how, what your thoughts are. Because you've done both, right? You've been an entrepreneur as well as, working for an institution. So what are kind of how this is affecting different people?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me on the show. I guess my first thought, I said it to my husband the other day, was that it's probably the first time in my life that I'm happy that I don't own a business. Because business owners right now are being faced with just an incredible challenge, right? Whether to keep people on, whether to let them off, how they're going to survive this whole entire thing. So, it's funny, we all kind of went through a process of things aren't going to be that bad. I read, a Wall Street Journal article that said this is consumerism that's delayed, not destroyed. And that very quickly turned into destroyed consumerism. So these companies are losing sales that they are never, ever getting back. If you're not eating out, if you're not taking a flight, you're not going to do that in multiples once things get back to normal. So it very quickly went from, how do we kind of stem the tide and try to retain some sales, to holy cow, how are we going to survive this? And that's really where so many people are in the economy right now, not only the business owners, but employees. Employees are trying to figure out, I have students asking me all sorts of questions. My employer wanted to take my hours from 40 to 10 hours. How do I handle that? And students saying, hey, I have a job offer, but it's not the best job for me. Should I take it? So kind of everyone is in this flux of not knowing what's coming next.
Oh, I have to agree with that 100%. And I know we've been having similar conversation, I'm sure you're having. And I mean, every business owner, you're always talking about like your top line, your sales, and then your expenses and your margins and things like that. And these are conversations you have, you budget them out. And a lot of times you'll bump up your expenses a little bit, and maybe you'll drop down your revenue a little bit. And maybe I'm being a little too optimistic. But this is literally one where your expenses, for the most part, are staying the same, except maybe you drop your employees. But your income literally has been off in a lot of these different institutions, or 90% off. I mean, if you're a restaurant owner, even if you're offering takeout, you maybe went down 90%, even if you stayed open. But that's just not a number that anybody really bakes into their thought process. I mean, you work within ranges, but this is just so far outside of what you would expect that even you're very successful. I mean, I remember listening to I think the person owned about 11 pizzerias as an example, and they're still doing deliveries, but not as many people are doing it. He literally had to let off over 90% of his, I think he went from, I forget what it was, but he's down to like 5 employees now from hundreds. Like 250 or 225 employees that were coming and going at all the time. And he's just, emotionally, he's really kind of devastated, because this becomes kind of part of your family as well. So I think there's just all these different levels. It's not just the financial aspect, but it's also kind of the emotional aspect of what's happening to people, and how no matter how good your contingency plan is, it never would have thought of this. Nobody thought of this.
No. Well, probably the majority of small business owners don't really have a contingency plan to begin with. A lot of them aren't at that level. They're small businesses. They're thinking about the day-to-day, and they generally don't think about this kind of contingency plan. I mean, even when I owned Five Guys, I lived through Hurricane Sandy and Irene. We lost power in both of my stores. I threw out thousands of dollars worth of food. Had to decide what I was doing with my employees. That was very short term. That was a matter of, weeks, a couple of days to a week, week and a half. No one expected to be shut down out of business for over a month. I mean, how do you survive that? So this is going to dramatically change the way people do business in the future. It's going to force business owners to, number one, think about contingency plans that are more long-term, not just, and not just small businesses. So I just read that United and Delta have enough cash to last them 2 weeks. Apple has enough cash to last them 6 years.
Right.
So, that's the difference in a contingency plan that's relatively short term. How do I survive a short term event versus how do I survive something that's unexpected?
Right.
Who could ever have planned for this? The second way that it's going to change business is they really do have to be creative in how they do their business. Maybe they need to diversify so that they, if somebody who's in retail, even as a small business, has an online portion of their business, not doing delivery, they need to think about doing delivery. How do I reach my customers at times when I don't have the ability to reach them face to face? There's a business in Lawrenceville, the Gingered Peach, and I know the owner, Joanne Kennedy Brown. She's done stuff for Ryder before. She did online tutorials to help pay her employees how to make the perfect croissant. So she's getting creative in ways I guess she never thought possible. And business owners are going to have to figure that out, and it's going to be different for every business. And then I think the third major thing is what you just spoke about, having these fixed expenses. Businesses are going to say, well, how do we take these fixed expenses like rent and labor and turn them into variable expenses? How do we not be exposed the way we were to having these fixed expenses that, God forbid, something happens and the whole world comes to an end and we're still faced doing these fixed expenses?
I mean, even the companies that had insurance against, business interruptions and things like that, this was not included, which I think they're trying to pass something that helps with that. But this is not, I mean, even from an insurance standpoint, even if in theory you had all the proper insurance in place, this is one of those exemptions, like, okay, we'll take care of everything except for essentially an act of God, right? I mean, this is beyond what any insurance company could manage, obviously. So, and I think that's one of the reasons the government's making their attempt to keep us going as best they can. But I think one of the things that I think there's so many pieces to this, I'm trying to figure out, but probably one of the ways to handle this is maybe take it kind of one segment at a time a little bit. And like, okay, first we have the employees. So here I am, a business owner, and let's say I'm like the restaurant owner that's got a couple hundred employees. And 3 or 4 weeks, 6 weeks ago, I was wondering, how am I going to find enough people to fill the slots that I have open?
Right.
Because the labor market is so tight, I'm having trouble attracting enough people, and I'm trying to figure out how to get them into, oh my gosh, I have to literally lay them all off for the most part, or most of them off. However, once they say we're ready to go back to work, I'm going to have two thought processes. One, I'd love to bring back all my employees, but can I really bring back the 250 initially? Because we may now have to stay 6 feet apart. So my restaurant now, instead of having 100 tables, might have 50 or 35 or some different number. So how do I try to retain my talent, I guess, regardless of my business, so that when things do at some point, I think we're all confident we will come back. The question is how fast and will we come back, and what will it look like? How do I retain as many of my employees as I can during this process? Do you have any thoughts about, like, to me, that would be that's the most valuable commodity for any business, is those people that help you make the business, right?
Yeah. Because you don't want to have to start training them all over again. You do want, a staff that's up and running. So two things that I think right now that I could say to business owners to investigate and research is, number one, are all of the programs that are coming out. So specifically, if you have an SBA loan, the SBA is going to be paying your loan for the next 6 months, and that is a forgivable loan. In other words, they're saying, hey, you don't have to pay your SBA loan. That's not all business owners, obviously. But the other program is the PPP program, where if you're retaining your payroll, again, the government is giving forgivable loans, and there's a set of criteria that you have to follow, obviously. But they're giving up to $100,000 to help firms stay in business, those firms that are keeping their employees on board. If you do not qualify for some of these programs, or they're out of your reach, whatever the case might be, you're going to have to become creative. So I know someone just mentioned to me their daughter works for Honeywell. Honeywell has said to their employees, we're going to have you 1 week on, 1 week off. So they've basically slashed their payroll by 50%. Saying to your employees, hey, we're all taking a pay cut, and that enables me to keep you on payroll. Maybe a pay cut is 20% or 25%. But employees don't want to be looking for another job either. So an employee would consider a pay cut, or I don't want to say that, but if I was working for an employer, yeah, I know. And my employer said, my goal is to keep all of you. Mm-hmm. I need you guys 20% pay cut for the next 2 months. Are you willing to do that? I'd be willing to do that. So coming up with ways of giving people some hours. I told you I had a student who called me up the other day. It was an alum. He had just graduated last year and said, my job wants to cut my hours down from 40 down to 10. And I do. And I said, there's not a lot that you can do. The only thing that you can do is negotiate with them and say, hey, I'm going to, make sure that you're still present on social media, and here's what I'm going to do, and here's how I'm going to provide value to you. So how about giving me 20 to 25 hours instead of cutting me down all the way to 10, and meeting them in the middle. So again, you're going to have both sides. Employees are going to have to be willing to accept a little bit less, and employers are going to have to come up with creative ways of how do I keep my employees on. But certainly if they can take advantage of these programs, that's a great way to do it as well.
That's fantastic advice, Lisa. We're going to take a quick break. You've been listening to Master Your Finances, and we'll be right back.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back. You're listening to Master Your Finances. I am Kurt Baker here with Lisa Teach, who is a former business owner of a Five Guys franchise, and also is a small business, now teaches small business management at Rider University. And there's a lot going on out there right now. And just before the break, we were talking about how employers both need to be a little bit flexible in these days, especially when the employer really wants to keep as many employees on as they can. And, when they start offering reduced hours and things like that, hopefully we can all work together and kind of work through this process. I guess one of my questions being, I don't know if you know the answer to this or not, but if I'm an employee and all of a sudden I say, okay, well, instead of working 40 hours a week, I'm going to go down to 10 or 20 hours a week. Of course, now I'm making less money, obviously. However, there's still other bills to be paid, right? So how do can I apply for any of these programs because now my salary is reduced. I haven't actually lost my job, so I'm not unemployed. So is there any consideration, or do we know if there's any consideration within some of these programs that are trying to help us get through this process? They can help somebody who's maybe taking a reduced salary.
Yeah, so there are actually programs, lots of programs at the state level. There is a number, and at the end of your program, I can get the number and we can put it up for United Way. And basically, call the United Way, you give them your zip code, and they give you a list of agencies who are willing to help out people with rent, with food, with all of those things. So there are programs, and you're starting to see all of these programs start to come in, and it's a little bit of chaos, right? I know even with the SBA programs, my husband works, for a bank that does SBA, and he said, well, the programs are supposed to start today, but nobody knows yet how to administer them. Right. People are kind of scrambling to figure out, well, how do we give these loans? Right. So it might take you a little while, and I guess the advice there is don't give up. Don't make a call feel like you're lost and overwhelmed, there are agencies who are gearing up and ramping up to help consumers and people and job seekers and people who have lost their jobs, in addition to the small businesses.
And I think most of the vendors, especially the major vendors, seem to be being very lenient about things. And I know New Jersey, I believe they offered the 90-day reprieve on mortgages if you feel you're going to have trouble making your mortgage payment, and things like that. So I guess the bottom line is, if you have any of these expenses, when in doubt, contact the creditor, whether it's the mortgage company, the credit card company, your car loan company. All these different companies are trying to come out with ways to help to defer these payments for at least a few months, with the idea that, my understanding is, most of these, what they'll do is they'll add the interest or whatever it is on the back end of your mortgage. So it might change things a little bit, 120 days from now, but at least it might give you a little extra cash if you do have to take a reduced salary, and maybe help you with other expenses like food and things like that, right? Which are obviously issues that the people are concerned about, right? So I do know, people that are talking about, oh my gosh, how am I going to have food next week?
Yeah.
And that's a little frightening to me. And I know, we even have, like, the farmer's market is offering, I know this weekend, the one over in Lambertville is offering some, free food to anybody, no questions asked, if you need some fresh vegetables. So there's a lot of people really kind of stepping up in these different ways. And I know the food banks are kind of putting food out there at a really high rate, and they're short on volunteers and not necessarily food. They're more, they have to have enough hands to give out the food.
Yeah.
So there's plenty. Fortunately, there's plenty of things out there. We were in pretty good shape before all this happened. So, the supply chain seems to be pretty well intact. It's just a matter of our economic system is completely turned on its head right now.
Yeah, it is. And I think, you said a lot of these companies know that you're not going to be able to pay your mortgage. I think what's important, whether you're in a crisis like this or any kind of financial crisis, because people have financial crisis all the time, is that you communicate, right? You say to them, my intention is to pay, but right now my hands are tied and I can't. And I think as long as you're communicating with your creditors and vendors, that's going to do you a load of good. It really is, to just.
Again, a lot of this, I know we talk about the financial aspect, but I think it's also a psychological and a mental health aspect of this thing too, that we have to at least recognize that this does affect you. And when you're under high stress, it's hard to make good decisions. So you have to really give yourself a little bit of a break, I think, and just say, okay, fine. I realize this is, I have a stack of bills over here. Just pick one.
Yeah.
And just call them, and don't, and understand that, yes, it is a stressful situation. But as you point out, the creditors are very, very aware of what's happening now.
Yeah.
And most of them already have some type of plan in mind as far as how they're going to handle it. And they are willing to help you out.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's easy to get paralysis analysis, right? It's so overwhelming.
Right.
I just want to stick my head in the sand and not and hide. And I think you're also correct in that there's going to be a huge mental health fallout. It is stressful, and there are a huge amount of people with a great amount of anxiety. Listen, for me, this has had some positive consequences, right? And doing a little bit more reading. I took a online course on LinkedIn Learning, but I have days when I have anxiety. I'm watching the news too often, and I see, the virus affecting people who are healthy, and I worry about my relatives, and I worry about my students, and I worry about my former workers and how they're handling things. So it does create a lot of anxiety. It is a high stress situation for people. So we're going to have to find out as a society how to deal with those things. I meditate and I find myself meditating more because whenever I watch the news, I get a little anxiety, and I'm like, okay, I need to kind of bring myself back to reality a little and just do the best that I can do.
I have to agree with that 100%, because I think even in our household, everybody, that's a common conversation, right? How much information do you want to receive?
Yeah.
Because you could literally, if you wanted to, watch the news all day and get every governor's opinion about what's happening in their own state, plus the federal level, plus the doctors, plus the military. You could just literally, get every version of what's happening out there to the point where you're going to be inputting so much negative information that it's not healthy.
Yeah.
Right. So you need to know what's happening, but you don't want to immerse yourself to the point where you can't do other things. And I think what you just mentioned is a really great idea. I think one thing that I'm trying to encourage people to do is maintain a routine of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
We had a routine before, and
Yep.
we want to try to have some semblance of a routine. I know my daughter and I are very much making sure that we get up, we work out, we start our day the same way we always started it for the most part. Now we can't go to the gym anymore, but you have to modify things. But I think adding, and then I think the other point that you made was fantastic, which is pick something that you probably were complaining about, how I never get time to read that book, or I never get time to meditate, or I never get time to do certain things that maybe you always wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Why not try it now, right? I know one thing I've done my continuing education credits. I'm going to be good for the year by the time this is over. So usually I'm stressing out like at a certain point of the year where I need to get them all done. Well, I'm going to be that's going to be way ahead of the schedule this year. So there are positives to it, right?
Yeah. And give yourself a break, like, don't get me wrong. My goal isn't to be productive at every minute of the day. I'm doing some mindless things like watching Friends reruns with my kids, making spaghetti tacos.
Oh, that's fun. Great.
Yeah, it's a forced slowdown, and you got to give yourself a break and realize that it's not important for you to be productive every minute of every day. Like, we've never had this situation. So if you can take advantage of it, take advantage of it.
Right. Yeah. So no, I agree. My daughter, actually, I didn't even know they had this, but she found like a 1990, I think, version of The Bachelor or something. It must have been like the first year. I don't know how old it was, but it was, my wife's like, that doesn't even look like, it was like fuzzy TV almost. I'm like, where did you find this? So we're finding things that we never, I don't know. I mean, you never would have thought of, right? That you have time to do that you never would have had time to do before. And I know another thing that, like in our case, like my wife and daughter are dog trainers, so they're starting to do virtual, classes. Things like what we're doing here is we're trying to do things virtually, and so I think we're learning some things that maybe we wouldn't have done before, right? And so,
well, it's definitely the silver lining to technology, right? So as much as a society we've complained that people are too connected to their phones, no one has any human interaction anymore. All of that technology has really served us well during this crisis. So you can go and work out virtually online. You can have meetings. You can, I've been teaching online. And I think that's where kind of, part of the silver lining is all of this technology that we've kind of been complaining about is still connecting us.
Right. So that's been a huge benefit. I know we're going to have to take another break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about how some of the industries might be changing when we come back from all this. Some that are going to probably do a little better, maybe some that aren't going to do quite as well. You're listening to Master Your Finances. We're going to be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to Master Your Finances. I am Kurt Baker here with Lisa Teach. We are talking about some of the effects that this COVID-19 is having on business owners and employees on many different levels. One of the things I'd like to talk about now is how things might look a little different after this is over, because some businesses are going to have a relatively easy time recuperating from this, right? You mentioned Apple a while back. They have plenty of cash, and maybe they'll sell a few less iPhones in the fall, but that's significantly going to be different. Whereas others, my local restaurant on the corner may or may not even be there when we come back. So they may make some changes about how they operate. So do you have an idea of like maybe different segments? I mean, we hear things about airline industry. We hear about hospitality industries. Some of them are going to be, have really had a huge impact on themselves. So what are your thoughts about some of the different industries and how things might change?
Yeah, I think, and even if you look at it from an employee point of view, if I was, like I said, my students are asking me, what does it look like? What's the employment outlook going to be like? And I said, you're going to have to look at what industries are changing and which industries are going to do well. And a lot of them are going to have to change. They're going to have to change out of necessity in order to survive. We're living in a time when there's a huge convergence in technology, and that's going to change things. I just read an article about ghost kitchens in the restaurant industry. So that's where food is prepared in a kitchen and there is no retail outlet. right? And then they're dealing with Uber Eats and Postmates delivering the food, and there's no, you're not going to that store, they're coming to you. So I think you're going to see technology affect a lot of these different industries. Certain ones are going to shrink, and obviously businesses are going to be very wary of brick and mortar, and they're going to look to go more online as much as they can. And then you're going to have some industries that are just going to explode. Consumer products, so people who are working for all the consumer products companies they all have their jobs, and they're working overtime right now trying to restock products in the supermarkets. Healthcare, you're going to see, again, we're underfunded in this country for healthcare. It's glaringly obvious to so many people that we're going to have to up our healthcare. And that doesn't mean just people on the front lines, right? It means people doing the billing, people doing intake, all of these things. Tech, insurance, I think, are going to be growing industries. And I feel like industries like travel, I don't know what's going to happen to travel, because like the airline industry has always been so volatile. Its whole history has been volatile from deregulation on.
I remember that.
But they're going to have to find technology and ways to, so they're going to have to find ways, again, to use technology. You have to wonder when the airlines start up again, are flights going to be high? Are they going to be low? They're obviously going to be low to try and get people to travel again. But at some point, they're going to have to raise prices just to survive, right? And have a profitable business. Nobody goes into business just for the fun of it, right? It's to make a profit, to bring value. So if you don't have a model that creates profit, then you're not going to be in business anymore. So it's going to be interesting to see how each of these industries responds to what's gone on.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. I think every industry is probably doing that right now, going through the analysis about, okay, how can we modify our plan, so to speak, to kind of blunt in case this happens again, because they're actually talking about how it may not be as serious, but this might be a 1 or 2 year process before we actually get through this virus alone. We don't really have a vaccine yet. We don't really know. I mean, in theory, there could be, even if it's less severe, there could be a shutdown next year. I mean, there could be some modification next year. I mean, we just don't know about what is going to happen and what the cycle of this is yet, because we haven't solved the problem. I mean, I'm hopeful that, we have a lot of very smart people working on this, and I'm optimistic we're going to come up with a solution fairly quickly. But what is that? What is quickly, right? Because, they could take years and years and years to come up with solutions. And right now, everybody's like, okay, well, you didn't get a test in like 2 weeks. So like, okay, well, realize this normally takes us like 6 months, a year, So there's an awful lot of pressure on these people to do things. And, we want things like yesterday, and we're like, well, that's not really the way it normally works. We're not that fast. But I think it's fascinating. And I think you're going to have two things that I'm kind of seeing is that one is, how does the business work on resetting itself? And then how quickly will the consumer, one, be willing to come back into certain things, right? They might still be nervous about going out on a cruise ship, right? Or they may not be financially ready. So you've got two aspects, right? You've got, do I want to do that particular activity yet? Maybe I'm going to wait a little bit. And other people are going to be like, well, wait a minute, I took a big hit. That money we saved for our vacation, we just used it to supplement the fact that I had reduced pay, and maybe we're not going to take our summer vacation this year, go to Disney World or whatever the case may be. Maybe we're going to have to wait till next year. So, but we don't know what that's going to be, right? Nobody really knows how that's going to. So what are your thoughts about some of those? Yeah.
I think so. Businesses, there's going to be a lot of strategic planning going on, obviously. Businesses have to kind of go back to the drawing board and say, hey, it's not business as usual anymore, because, we've seen with climate change, right? Hurricane Irene and Sandy, and we've seen, with 9/11, we had, for the first time in the country's history, a terrorism act on U.S. soil. And now we have this pandemic. So time and time again, businesses are faced with unexpected events, things that they can't predict. So it is going to force them and go back and for its very basic level, do a SWOT analysis on the business, right? So what are our strengths? What are our core competencies? What are we really good at? What are weaknesses? Where do we have opportunities to grow the business, but what are the threats? And the threats are these unexpected events. I think personally, people need to do a SWOT analysis. So when I teach strategic management, because that's another course that I teach, we look at it from a business point of view, but I also have the students perform a strategic plan for their own lives, right? What do I want to accomplish in 3, 5, 7 years? But part of that plan also has to be, and you do this for a living, right? Is what happens if something unexpected happens? What's my contingency plan? Do I have enough money to last me if my income were to go to zero? And that's where I see both the individual and businesses are all going to have to look at those things. And like you said, businesses don't know what's going to happen. They don't know how fast people are going to come back up to equilibrium, right, in the marketplace again, and start, consuming the way that at the same level that they were consuming.
Oh, I have to agree.
They're
No, I agree with everything you said. And the SWOT, it's the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? That analysis.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure but yeah, no, you can do that on a business level. You can do that on your individual level. And I know that one thing that we talk about a lot, just on an individual business plan, is you want your your baseline expenses covered. Like when people talk about retirement, it's almost like you have to think about your business activity in kind of a retirement aspect, like what assets are absolutely secure, right? Like
right.
You have Social Security, you have pensions. In some cases, people use things like annuities. I mean, whatever the case may be, like no matter what happens, there's a high probability you're going to at least have that. So I think people are going to start looking at, just even from a business as well as a personal aspect, do I have everything arranged in a way that if I do have something this serious happen, I mean, people are getting ready to retire right now. And if I was getting ready to retire and I wasn't expecting a 30% reduction or 35% reduction in my assets, and that happened, back in 2008 and 9, and if they weren't planning for these things ahead of time, that's the part that makes me nervous, because I often quote, and anybody's doing planning, and I know all planners kind of do this, is we talk about the 08-09 analysis, all right? What if 08 happened to you again? Would you be able to sustain that in your plan, right? And this is like a weight on steroids, right? Because we're not even sure that we recovered fairly quickly from that, even though, at the time it seemed like horrendous activity, right? Because a lot of things we did back then we'd never done before, right? The banks were in critical condition. We weren't even sure.
Yeah, it was painful.
The credit markets locked up. All these things happened where I think this time the government recognizes that certain mechanisms you can't allow to stop, but now we're not sure exactly what that means either, right? So if you just leave these things open, what impact is that going to have down the road? So you have to kind of think about it. So I think we've learned some things, but this is a different experience. So I think on a business level as well as on an individual level, you have to at least think about these things to some degree. Do I have my basics? Like you talked about the fixed expenses. How am I going to manage fixed expenses? Even if I'm a business owner, right? And you said most people don't think about that. If I'm a homeowner, do I have things set aside just for those things? And we talk about the 3 and the 6 months of reserves, right? If you lose your job and you have a dual income, can one job loss, do we have at least 3 months to cover all of our expenses? If you're a single person, do I have at least 6 months to cover expenses? Maybe businesses need to start thinking about that way, right? I mean, I don't know. They should be thinking more about
They do.
Because normally they're working on fairly tight margins. Most of them aren't like Apple where they have these huge margins. Most people have pretty narrow margins. So I think you're right. I think businesses are going to have to go back and kind of think about this a little bit.
Yeah, listen, it's hard. When I was a business owner, I had enough resources that I could cover an expense like shut down for a week with Hurricane Irene, losing power, having to throw out food, things like that. I know if from that experience, if I would have been prepared, I definitely wouldn't have been prepared for this. I know I wouldn't have. So it's not all dark though. The fact of the matter is we are very resilient. People are going to want to get back to normal, but like you said, they are going to have to make really tough decisions. In family, we were talking about going away and we're like, well, maybe we'll go flying anywhere. Maybe we'll stay a little bit closer to home. God forbid we went somewhere overseas and got stuck there for whatever reason, so you start to think about all of these things, and it does have an effect on business, but like I said, people are going to want to return to normal. So like you said, I think there are a lot of really smart people who are going to help us along in getting back to where we need to go again.
Absolutely. I agree. I'm an optimist, and I'm sure we're going to get through it. As you point out, we're very resilient. You've been listening to Master Your Finances, and we're going to be right back.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome back. You're listening to Master Your Finances. I'm Kurt Baker here with Lisa Teach, and we're talking about the impact that the pandemic has had on businesses as well as individual families. And it's been kind of rough. It happened pretty quickly. I think 6 weeks ago, nobody ever would have dreamed that we'd be sitting here talking about the fact that everything is shut down and you can't go out to eat and you can't go to the movies, and you're ordering food and you have to go pick it up, or you have to wear a mask to pick it up. But there are positives happening out there. So we're going to talk about the positive aspect of it. So Lisa, you want to go through some of the positive aspects of what's going on right now? And as we come out of that, some things that are going to be positive out of this. How's that? We're going to be positive now.
Yeah, well, entrepreneurs, I think, are always positive, right? Otherwise, they would never go into business, because if you were a pessimist, you'd think about all the ways that you could fail in business. Mm-hmm. So entrepreneurs just in general tend to be an optimistic bunch. But I think whenever there's a crisis like this, there's always a silver lining. There's, these kinds of crises provide opportunities. So in terms of employment, people are going to have to follow small business. They're going to have to learn how to pivot, right? And figure out what are the industries that are growing, and where do I go, and how do I get those skill sets? People are going to need to follow the money, for lack of a better expression. For businesses, there's plenty of opportunities. There's, products that protect people, products that are going to save people money, products that, maybe minimize contact or connect people in ways where they're protected. So, you have a lot of these government and state programs that are going to help to prop up existing businesses, but there's a ton of programs coming out to help new businesses as well. And because of the 07 and the 08 crisis, entrepreneurship amongst young people is actually at a 20-year low, and they think it's because a lot of these people lived through the financial crisis and saw their parents struggle and lose jobs and lose homes. I do think that mentally this affects entrepreneurs as well. You have some entrepreneurs who are going to be like, wow, terrible time to start a business. I don't want to start a business now. But I do think there's huge opportunity for people who say, hey, I have a great idea, something that happened to me during this crisis that I think I can solve now. It's just like being in the stock market. When it drops, you want to be there when it starts its first upswing, right? Most of the gains are made within the first 15% of the upswing. And I feel like those businesses who are in this now, figuring it out, are going to do very, very well for themselves. So there is a silver lining in all of this, and that's all of the opportunity that's going to start to come out of it, for sure.
I absolutely agree. And I think one thing that, and as an employee or as an employer, I think when things start back up again, if you're an employer, you may actually have an opportunity to pick up some pretty good employees for one reason or another that might be looking for a job.
Yeah.
Maybe you wouldn't have been able to get 6 or 8 weeks ago, because you're going to have a little bit of a shift in the employment situation. When we had record unemployment, and now you have record unemployment the other direction, negative, right? So we went from literally one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. So maybe the opportunity for employees as well as employers, if you're thinking about maybe there was a job you were trying to get at a company, or maybe there's something you're trying to do. So you start up a business. I think the business aspect, I think is very smart on your part to mention that, because one, rates are very low. So if somebody wants to start a business, I have a feeling
Yes.
the government and the markets are going to be very friendly towards anybody starting a business as far as the interest rate cost. I think the underwriting requirements aren't going to be quite as stringent, because they're going to recognize there's going to be needs out there for a lot of these businesses, because other ones, unfortunately, we are going to lose some businesses in this cycle. I mean, they have various numbers. They talk about how many restaurants are not going to be able to come back from this for one reason or another. So at some point that does present an opportunity. Right. So, yeah.
I think for the businesses who do survive this, though, they are going to come back stronger.
Agreed.
You know, they're going to figure out that I have to have a contingency plan, and how do I tweak and pivot the business so that I can survive something like this again. So there is this kind of phoenix out of the ashes situation that is going to have for some businesses. They are going to be able to survive that and do better, you know, for having lived through this. But unfortunately, there is going to be fallout. There are going to be some businesses who don't actually survive that. And, you know, that's sad. That's the sad part of it. But, you know, the silver lining is that some businesses are going to come out stronger. There are more opportunities. There are, you know, new products waiting to be discovered and created. And there's going to be a lot. Listen, you know, venture capital is more active than it ever has been. You know what I mean? So I think we've had one other year in the 2000s that more venture capital was given out, but for the most part, it's still robust and healthy. And like I said, you have a huge convergence of technologies that are going to result in incredible things coming in the future for everybody.
Oh, I agree 100%. I think part of what's happening now is we're really kind of testing some of this the technology we've seen emerging as far as the automation. I know Amazon has really been put to the test, right? As an example, I mean, we talked about how you know, they've kind of have been perfecting this ability to deliver goods to us. But now you're seeing, at least what I'm seeing, is that other companies are kind of showing their ability to do the same thing. And I think competition's good, right? So if you have other competitors like the Walmarts and the Targets and all these others are now really having to up their game, I think, because people can't as easily come into the store for one reason or another. They don't want to come into the store. So I think you're seeing more of a perfection of some of these things that maybe they had planned on doing. Now they're kind of forced to do it. But I think ultimately, once they're done and we come out of this, like, okay, we really got this down, how to deliver goods in a cost-effective way. So I think there's a lot of positive coming to this. And there's a lot of industries that have really, I think, come to the you know, not just, you know, we got the healthcare system has really shown their, you know, their value, obviously, to what we're doing here, and they're doing everything. I mean, they've got, you know, God bless them, it's fantastic. And then, but you got things like the truckers, right? And you got the farmers. You have all these other people who are really stepping up to help and showing just how good they can be at what they do. And now I think we're trying to offer value to these people. I mean, honestly, I think sometimes we forget like just how valuable they are.
And I think we're also at a crossroads in business where, and we're also at a crossroads where businesses also want to do social good, and they realize the value of sustainability. And, you know, another positive consequence of this is there's so many fewer cars on the road, right? That it's improving you know, our climate and our air. And, you know, I hope that is another kind of aha moment for business owners and for people creating new products and services to say, hey, you know, the whole world had to stop. And, you know, how do we take something like that and make it a positive, you know, and also have it be a business kind of thing. So again, taking these unexpected positive consequences and saying, how do we use technology to do these things? You know, instead of sending a truck, you know, sending a drone to deliver people's medication and, you know, essential supplies. You know, using, you know, batteries more than we're using, carbon
Right.
carbon emission vehicles.
Yeah, definitely
all of
putting
those
everybody to
things.
the test. I
So,
agree. Yeah, I remember seeing a shot of like LA. They were showing like each week, I think it was a week or two apart, and it went from like really, really hazy to like crystal clear, which like you never get in LA anymore, apparently.
yeah,
So, but
I've
yeah, no,
seen those.
really, there are positives to this for sure. And
Yeah,
crime
I've
rates are
seen those.
down, right? Crime rates are
Yeah,
down. So I don't
yeah,
know
I've
what's
seen
wrong.
those pictures of China as well, and I don't know if they're actually real news or fake
I don't know
news.
either, but it's good to think, right? I mean, we're not driving as much, obviously, but yeah, so we're definitely learning a lot about how to deliver products and services in a more efficient way, which I think is part of what is really is kind of upping our game. I agree with that 100%. And we're operating now, even today, we're operating differently than we would have done a couple of weeks ago. So that's kind of cool.
Right.
So I'm learning things
Yeah.
today. So that's fun.
Yeah, I
So
am as well.
yeah, absolutely. So who do we think is going to come out of this kind of first? I mean, I'm trying to think about the who's going to lead us out of this. Let's say we're going to try to make some predictions here, right? I'm assuming we're going to probably step back into this slowly, right? They're probably going to say, hey, we can come back into this, but here's going to be some things we recommend, like not necessarily, social distancing. I think is going to stay around for a while. I think all of us are going to be pretty cautious about that, and so I think it's going to be fascinating.
Yeah.
So how quickly we all go out to eat. I know some people are like, I can't wait to get back to the restaurant and go out to have a nice meal. Right? I don't know about you, but I'd love to go out and have a nice meal at the restaurant right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what are we going to do when this opens up again? What are your thoughts about that? What are some things that are going to see it right away?
I think, like you said, people are going to be cautiously optimistic. They're not going to go rushing back. So if you maybe ate out twice a week in the past, maybe you went out Friday, Saturday, as my family did. We're probably going to do once a week, until we're comfortable and we feel good about where things are going. So I do think that companies and products and services that provide essentials, right? Food, clothing, shelter, it's not going to bother me to go into Home Depot and drop money if I know it's for my house and that's where I live. Those are going to come back first. I think people are going to be very eager to have experiences again and get away. I know I feel like that. I feel like, oh gosh, I want to go away somewhere. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I'm probably going to venture out locally within the US before I head to Europe, before I go to Mexico. You know what I mean? So
Right.
I think it's going to be that slow, let me test the waters, dip my toe in the water, make sure it's okay, that I'm not going to drown. And then slowly get to where I was or where, my family was.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I feel like luxury product companies maybe are not going to bounce back as fast. You really don't need that Louis Vuitton bag when the chips are down and things are going bad. It's your family is the most important, right? The F's, the family, friends, faith, fitness are the important things, and not so much, discretionary things like, the nice handbag or the car. So I think those are going to be the last things to come back for people.
Right. But we're definitely coming back. Lisa, I really appreciate you coming on. And I appreciate all the insights that you've had to this and your optimistic outlook. I'm an optimist as well. And I know we're going to come back. And everybody, we want everybody to kind of take care of themselves. You've been listening to Master Your Finances, and you can reach us on at masteryourfinances.us. And remember, together we can master your finances. You can enjoy financial peace of mind.
All right.